Well, good morning, and I did it again. I forgot that Jerry was preaching last week, and it was about right here. So put that level down. Good morning to everyone by way of YouTube and Channel 12. We're glad you're worshiping with us. It's always great to have you with us, being in worship together, and everyone here this morning, and all of you who are visiting, and to dads today on this special day. What a great day. Let me first say, though, we mark something really important tomorrow on the calendar in our country, really important to the African-American community of Juneteenth, what they really consider the Freedom Day for them, emancipation, because of what happened in Texas. So a shout out to that, but in our hearts and our prayers and our witness together, we really acknowledge that. I have another something that's a little bittersweet but lovely. A shout out to someone in the choir who has been with us from childhood. Grew up here, was a Sewanee grad, went to the University of South, our university, is currently an ESK teacher. It's Allison Carr. There's Allison. She's going to cry, but I want you to give her a round of applause because she has been a great, great asset to us. Y'all can come in Wednesday night. The choir's going to do a little bit of thing for her with her new family. She's about to be married, and the reason we're giving her a shout out, she's leaving, and we hate that. Well, y'all can just move back. We'll find him a job. But anyway, you have been fabulous. Thank you. And you're fabulous at ESK, and we're going to miss you every Sunday, really, every Sunday. And I remember you when you were a little girl, so it's hard. It's hard for me. But anyway, all right. Father's Day. I know this is strange to you, but you know what I thought of instantly, and I have no idea why. I was thinking of Jim Henson, the puppeteer. Do you remember Jim, who did the Muppets? Well, in the 1990s, and I had a toddler at that time, he did a TV show. I don't know if you even remember it. I bet most people don't. It was dinosaurs. It was called Dinosaurs. And he made anthropomorphic puppets, big puppets. And then they filmed them, and honest to goodness, you thought they were alive. But it was a mama dinosaur, a daddy dinosaur, and they had a baby. And it was like they were Americans, living American life. It was the strangest thing, but it was hilarious. But the funniest thing, and it sticks in my mind, and it just came to me a couple of weeks ago, there was the greatest scene, the toddler's in the high chair throwing food, and looks at the mommy and says, "Mommy!" And then daddy comes over. You know what the baby called the daddy? Not the mommy. It has stuck with me all these years. And I said, Jim Henson has it nailed. We are not the mommy. That's all we are. So this morning, this is not the mommy day in America. I'm telling you. We get second bill all the time. Every man in this place knows it. It's not a big deal. You got your cards right. Anything else, a handshake, thank you. Please fix the lawnmower, it's broken. I mean, seriously. But it really is kind of a funny thing to me. And so for Father's Day, what do we say? I mean, what do you say on a day like this? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I did some homework. I really kind of did my homework and looked through read probably 25 to 30 sermons. I just downloaded them. We have lots of access to sermons, some archived, some recent, of all kinds, of all kind of clergy preaching. And it was interesting to me kind of what I saw, the images, many of the cliches. So these will be familiar to you. So the body of it was something like, fathers are the head of the household. Fathers need to be godly men. Fathers need to be peaceful warriors and prayer warriors. Fathers need to curb their appetites, be more attentive, heed the warnings of what happens in fatherless homes. And that one got a whole lot of play. Well, I thought, well, that's pretty good, I guess. But then I dove a little deeper and spent a lot of time with my colleagues' thoughts. And they helped me think about Father's Day, frankly. That's why I did it. And then I found that my fellow clergy were really wrestling with deeper things. Like how complex and nuanced the understandings of our roles are today. What it really means to be a father or mother. How much confused we are about much of that. Real conversation about how do we hold up And fathers particularly held up a real spiritual and moral leadership in a very, well, confusing time, full of a lot of tension, a lot of tension, a lot of confusion. And a call over and over for fathers and, by the way, mothers to be less distracted, more encouraging, especially during the vulnerable stages of adolescence. Well, that's all well and good, but you know what I know is what really matters is what you think. What do you think about fathers? What was your father like? And maybe as important, what was your father like, but what were the fathers around you like? It was a Yale professor, by the way, I think it was Yale, not Princeton, who said it takes a village to raise children. So what were the fathers around you like? Well, I started thinking, and I'm older than a bunch of you, not old as Jim Haslam, but I'm older than some of you. And you know what I realized is all the men actually were more the age of Jim Haslam and some of the older men in this congregation. They were World War II era men. My father was as well. That's what we grew up with. That was their experience. And they'd all served in the war, most of them, or like my father, they served the country during the war. He was at a post exchange, the largest army base in the United States, and my mom and dad did that for years during the war and after the war. That was their service. But you know, in my era, fathers were cut out of the same cloth. I don't care if they were black or white, north or south, east coast or west coast. There was something more homogenous about them. Let me give you a few thoughts. Fathers weren't involved around the house much, period. My dad never did a dish. He never washed any dishes. I don't remember it. But he worked hard, and men did most of the work outside the house. Fathers didn't share their feelings. I think my father knew about 4 emotional words, but they worked kind of. But it just wasn't encouraged either. And by the way, fathers who were very religious often went to church and seldom said a word about religion. Just didn't offer many thoughts about it. Most of the dads I knew around me were handy. They could fix anything, cars, you name it. But some weren't. Some were athletic, some not. That was kind of a mixed bag. But I know one thing, there wasn't much time for the idle time that we have to build our bodies and to play at games. Just didn't exist. Fathers were highly educated, but some not so. But in my day, fathers were all considered smart because they could all do things, contribute. There was a smartness in that in our culture that frankly I kind of wonder where it went. And fathers were tied to tradition. They were tied to the tradition in which they were raised. And that was many-faceted, but they were tied to it. What was your father like? Whatever age you are now, if your dad's still alive, what is he like as you look back? What were the men, the fathers around you like? That exercise did something for me that I wasn't quite aware of, but it grew on me. It made me aware that they're all kind of fathers. I read 25 or 30 sermons, kind of cookie cutting. It's not a cookie cutter business. Dads come in all shapes, sizes, strengths, lack of strengths, weaknesses. Everybody's got them, skills, lack of them. But they were all and are still, for the whole part, for the most part, good fathers. See, there's no simple template. But there's some things we probably might agree to, considering we're in church on a Sunday. Let me tell you about a man named Dan, who is probably 10 years older than I. He's a real person, by the way. His father served in the Army during World War II. He was with one of the infantry units going across Europe from D-Day to Germany, and he did not come home. He was killed in Europe. And Dan grew up without a biological father, but he had a happy household, lovely childhood. But he always longed to kind of know his dad. He didn't know him. And he always wanted to hear one thing, very touching. He always wanted to hear his dad say, "I love you." And his mom assured him that his father loved him. There was no doubt about it. Well, Dan grew up, had a great family, great career, his great-granddad. But as he got much older, his mom got much older, and he was cleaning her house out so she could go to assisted living, a common thing that many of us have been through, going through the stuff. And lo and behold, there was a box of family stuff that he had never seen. He starts pulling out pictures and documents and reminders and notes, and he was just mesmerized by it. And then he stumbled onto it. A picture of his father with his army buddies in Europe, and he had never seen the picture. Well, he started looking at it, he kept turning it over, he flipped it, and he dropped it and broke it, which was the best thing that could have ever happened. Because when he tried to put the frame and the picture mat and the glass back together, there was a note hidden behind the picture. His father had written him a note, a 3-year-old boy in America, in case he didn't return. And in 3-year-old language, or language a 3-year-old might understand, he tried to describe the army, what the war was about, what he was about. And this is how the note ended. Dan, always know I love you. What I want to remind you of, and we know it's never too late to hear the words. It is never too late to say the words. It is never too late to live the words. And we know that our fathers love their children. But you know, sometimes in opaque ways. Men are strange. I am one of the strange men. Sometimes our words come out in actions. Sometimes we lack that emotional vocabulary. Maybe my generation worse than others. But the love's there. You might have to look for it. You know, I'm aware of something that even though Episcopalians think we don't think about heaven all the time, yes we do. We're all kind of evangelical in some Southern Protestant way. We're just predominated by what's going to happen when we die. And nobody knows. And something that eats at us, and it's preached about, and we worry about it. And many of you didn't grow up in a tradition that didn't emphasize it all the time, so you still have it. You got it in childhood. But I do know one thing. We could spend a little more time about something we do know about because we know about God. And I would say the way we know about God is we know about God's love for us when we watch a father love his children, when we watch a mother love her children. We have clear evidence of what this business is about. So on Father's Day, a shout out to all the dads. And you know, I was thinking, why don't we start giving the Best Dad Award out or something? I don't know how we would do that. It'd be kind of fun. But I want to leave you with this because I have a candidate. And my wife reminded me of my candidate because I was introduced to this dad a year ago. I saw him on television. His name is Jeff Agar, lives in Michigan. And Lois said, man, you need to look at that video again. Well, I remembered the story. So I watched the video. And Jeff he's interesting. He's the head of a nonprofit. His son, Johnny, is a senior in college, great family, has 2 daughters. Just the greatest guy. What makes them interesting is they do triathlons together, he and his son. It's just a fascinating story. They compete together. And it's interesting because Jeff will say, I don't like doing it. And they say, well, why do you do it? He said, because my son Johnny wanted to do it, so I train and do it with him. What also makes them a little unusual is the reason they do it really literally together is because Johnny has cerebral palsy. And so, Dad Jeff, who's not a young guy, by the way, I'm pretty impressed he's in his 50s. I'm pretty impressed with what kind of shape he's in. He swims 2.4 miles with Johnny pulling Johnny the entire way. He rides a bike 112 miles with Johnny in a trailer behind him, every pedal. And he runs 26.2 miles pushing a racing stroller built for an adult for Johnny. Now, Johnny's not passive, by the way. He's talking the entire time. Exuberant. He loves it. Coaching his dad, telling him what to do. Not in the water, probably. But giving him advice and cheering him the whole way. And they are amazing to watch. By the way, you have to do that work. You have to do that thing in 17 hours, and they failed 6 times to make it in 17 hours. Then they finally did it one time. What's powerful is to watch the end of the race. Johnny doesn't quite run, but he walks the last 100 yards with his father across the finish line. Social media has picked up on this. Jeff gets thousands of contacts a week from dads who said, I barely do anything with my kids. You've got to be the best dad of the year, or maybe the decade, or maybe a century. I don't know, maybe he's all 3. And you know what Jeff says to that? Nothing. He shakes his head. He's a low-key kind of guy. He does have a bit of advice, though, that I wanted to share with you, and this is what Lois made me aware of. You want to hear his advice? He said, well, you don't have to be a great father. Just be a better dad every day. I bet you know what to say to that, because I do. The word is amen.